Very first thing is I want to be real with you guys. Let's be real together here. Every guy has most likely looked at an action hero like Jason Statham or Jean-Claude Van Damme back in the day in Bloodsport and thought, man, I would love to look like that. Strong and lean, athletic, very, very capable, right? But right now, maybe you might just be feeling a little bit more close to George Costanza from Seinfeld. Soft around the middle, maybe rocking the dad bod a little too hard, and definitely not looking like these action heroes that most of us dreamt of growing up and actually looking like, all right? So the main problem is that for most of us, every time that you try to change that, you end up in one of two places. So number one is that you lose some weight, but just end up a smaller version of the George Costanza, which is still soft, still not where you want to be, and definitely not looking like the action hero. Or the second is you try to bulk up thinking, you know what, I'm going to focus more on that strength and size. And unfortunately, it basically just lends to you looking more like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, big and puffy, and definitely, again, not exactly lean and powerful. And this is what I went through so much, so I get it. I've been there. I used to struggle with the exact same thing. I would try bulking up, and the next thing I knew, I would gain way too much fat, and I felt soft and out of shape. But then I would kind of bounce from that extreme to the other. I would try to lose the body fat that I pick up, only to feel skinny and weak, with people, my favorite, people asking me if I'd even stopped lifting altogether. It was a frustrating cycle, and it really just left me feeling like I'd never have the physique I wanted. Can any of you guys relate? If so, go ahead and drop me a comment below. I know I can't be the only one here. I've been training for 20 years now, and most of the men that I have worked with, this is where they were and where they wanted to be. The cool thing is after years of trial and error, now I've been a fitness coach for 20 years in 2025 now, and tons of studying and working as this fitness coach career. About 8 years ago, maybe around 9, it finally clicked for me, like everything, where I'm no longer going from feeling skinny fat and too small to feeling like I'm, huge and puffy and feeling like I'm out of shape. And the thing of it is I figured out the exact steps to go from that, as I used to describe myself, the George Costanza. Yes, I would be a taller version of that, but that was how you feel, And I went from the George Costanza to more of feeling like that action hero look that I'd always dreamt of. And the cool thing is that I know how to do this without PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, without the bodybuilder diets, and without the 2-hour-long bodybuilder style workouts. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to do the same. So, if this has been you, if you feel like this is relatable, again, go ahead and drop me a comment and let me know which action star were you most obsessed with wanting to look like. Again, I'm not going to be helping you to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or, Ronnie Coleman and those like that. Those are the bodybuilders where you are absolutely going to have PEDs, not going down that road. But if you think back to Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bloodsport, Patrick Swayze and Roadhouse, and Jason Statham, pretty much anything he's freaking in, or Sylvester Stallone and Rambo and Rocky, these are the figures, the physiques that I wanted and that I was focused on getting. And this is where I started off my personal training and my fitness coaching careers to help people look like that. And along the way, somewhere around 12, 13 years ago, I just kind of stumbled into the weight loss scene where I was helping out both men and women to lose weight. And as of recently, over the last couple of years, that yearning, that itch to start helping guys just like me who wanted to get that action hero physique, I've been really working on dialing that back in, and that's what I'm talking to you about today. So what I want you to do is to think about those action movies that you love. Statham jumping out of some sort of, burning car or something crazy. Jean-Claude Van Damme pulling off one of those lethal roundhouse head kicks. Their physiques were ripped, they were jacked, they were masculine, they scream strength, capability, and confidence. And that's what most of us are after, right? Maybe just me, but I doubt it, all right? Now, think about most fitness programs out there. Most of them are designed to take you from Costanza to a slimmer Costanza. Still soft, still not the action hero look. That's most weight loss programs. And that's honestly what I was getting so bored with, is because I want to help people to not just become a smaller version of themselves. I want to help you to have an incredible transformation, one that you're proud of. And the second thing that most fitness programs do is they try to take you from a George Costanza to a Ronnie Coleman. Huge and jacked, or just huge, but still not functional, super bulky and blocky, and requiring access to what I would deem to be a veterinarian's horse meds just to do it. And I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in being basically so blocky and bulky that I'm not moving. And the thing of it is like, let's just be real here. It's great for this stage, but let's face it, it's just not the look that most of us want for the boardroom or for the beach. And it's bulky, it's blocky, it's anything but functional. And the thing of it is, have you ever seen those guys in jeans or a suit? It's really funny. It's honestly hilarious. It's not remotely GQ or Statham-like in the slightest. And so growing up, I did, because of my insecurities of feeling too small and unathletic, I did go for the extreme where I wanted to look more like the bodybuilder. And over the years, I started realizing this isn't functional. And most women don't really actually, I'm not saying some don't, but most women, at least the ones that I know, didn't find that more attractive than the Jason Stathams and the Jean-Claude Van Dammes. And, even if you look at, what's-his-face, Zac Efron, when he got lean and ripped for, I think it was that remake of, what is that, the most terrible show in history, or one of them, Baywatch, and they did that movie. Women loved that. Now, I'm not saying that some guys don't want to look like The Rock, but I think it's safe to say that The Rock looked good, 10, 15 years ago, and then we just saw him just balloon up and just look like a superhuman freak. Now, again, would it be nice to look like that on occasion? Sure. But is it realistic? Is that something that's going to look good and functional in the type of clothes that you and I want to wear? No, it's not. I've got friends that are that huge, and honestly, it's like when you see them trying to look fashionable or just even looking normal, they stand out like a sore thumb, and not in a good way, in my opinion. Now, again, no offense. If you're huge and jacked, do your thing. It's just not what I'm called to do, and it's not what I'm called to help people do. So what you really want is what those action heroes have, okay? It's a lean, athletic, and very functional body. One that looks as good in a suit as it does on the beach. And the problem is that most people don't know how to build that kind of a physique. But I do. So what I want to do is have you listen here, and I'm going to show you the 3 key steps to get there, okay? I'm going to break down some of these things. Now, one of the very first myths that I need to bust is that most men believe that they can't gain muscle while losing fat, number one. But with the right training and nutrition, believe it or not, many actually see strength improvements and shape improvements during a fat loss phase. But what we want to do is we actually want to start with a fat loss first. So most guys are like, well, I've got some muscle, but I've got too much fat. What should I do? Because, I want to be leaner, but I also want more muscle. And part of me is thinking I should just start working on building up some muscle, and then I'll lean up later. And, that way it's just one and done. I totally get that. But the issue that ends up happening is you end up gaining more body fat than what you want to. And then you've maybe got 30, 40, 50 pounds of body fat to lose. And when you look at the amount of muscle that you can put on, by the time you end up cutting off that body fat, you might be looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 pounds of muscle that you gained, and yet you had to lose so much more because you gained more. So instead of doing that, what I like to do is start with fat loss first. And the main reason why is that if you try to bulk while carrying excess fat, you're just going to end up looking puffier. So you feel, if you're like me and you're already battling some of those insecurities, you feel worse about that. So leaning out first is going to set the stage for a more defined muscular look. And then we can start building on to there, and you're going to gain minimal body fat if you gain it all. And that's the cool thing. So you want to focus on creating a slight calorie deficit while lifting weights to preserve that muscle. And the most important thing is making sure that when you're in a calorie deficit, you're still lifting, focusing on strength and hypertrophy, number one. And number two, you've got to make sure that you're in a deficit, but you're not so deep in a deficit that you're depleting your lean body mass. And one of the best ways to do this is to make sure, number one, you don't cut out your carbs. Number two, that you actually keep enough protein. So protein is going to prevent that loss of lean body mass, allowing you to actually see the muscle that you've worked for, so you can get lean. Now, if you don't have much muscle, I still recommend getting lean first, because you're still going to put on muscle in that leaning process if you're doing the program like I teach. And this is going to lead you to not just losing body fat, but actually starting to get what we call body recomposition. This means that you're going to have a transformation visually long before you even put on the size that you want to. And this is what's great, is people start asking you, dang, what are you doing? You look so good. And how do you get your arms so chiseled and your shoulders? You might be thinking, I'm still small, I don't get it. But most people, though, they think that if you are lean and you've got a little bit of muscle tone, you are, I mean, look at Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. He was not big in the slightest, but he was lean, and he definitely turned the eye of the women, right? Women still talk about that. I was talking with my wife today in the car saying, like, yeah, you know, remember Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse? She's like, oh, yeah. She doesn't care that he was a smaller frame guy. He looked good and he was ripped, right? That's the idea. This is where we want to start with fat loss first, and then we start actually working on building muscle. Now, this leads us to part 2, which is lift to keep and build muscle, okay? So the very first thing is that many men worry that they're going to look small or frail when they're losing fat. But the opposite happens if you actually train right and you have the right calorie intake and macronutrient balances. Again, if you're getting the right amount of calories and the right amount of proteins, you're not going to look small. You're only going to look bigger because you're creating more of the lines and shadows that really give the illusion of size. Plus, you won't have the belly. You will have more of the pec definition. Again, look at Brad Pitt from, from Fight Club. He was not big, but who doesn't want to look like that? If you're looking anywhere close to a George Costanza right now, wouldn't you be willing to pretty much trade anything to look more like what Brad Pitt did in that movie, Fight Club? I think so. So that's kind of the idea here. So what do we focus on? Well, when we're focusing on lifting, to whether we're trying to build muscle and build mass, or we're trying to lean up, we want to focus on progressive overload and eating for your goals instead of just eating for your feelings. And again, what I used to do is I would overeat whenever I felt small, because I'm like, you know, if some is good, more must be better, and dirty bulking's all right because, you know, I'm so much of a hard gainer, I've got to do this. Wrong. That was basically just giving me permission to just throw caution to the wind and eat anything that I want to. And that sucks, because you end up affecting your metabolism and gaining way more body fat than muscle. It doesn't work that way. So what we want to do instead is gradually increase those calories when we're doing our muscle gain. And if we're in a deficit, we want to make sure that we're gradually reducing calories as needed. But the main thing is that we're making sure that we're in progressive overload with adequate protein, which means that each week we're not only eating adequate protein and calories, but we're trying to, even though we're in a deficit, we're still trying to either increase in repetitions or in 1 to 2 pounds on the lifts that we're doing, as opposed to just going through the motions. And when you're doing this right with adequate nutrition, I can assure you, you're going to notice some changes. So what we want to do is focus on lifting with intention instead of jerking the weight around. We want to make sure that we're using time under tension and progressive overload, which again is making it harder on yourself every single week, whether by adding repetitions, or you can even add, if you're going for more volume, you can add a full set. Another way to do this is by slowing down your tempo, which means that you're controlling the weight more and you're using less momentum. All of these ways are great ways to increase your overall muscle, even when you're in a calorie deficit. And this is, if nothing else, this is going to preserve the muscle that you've got. But for most of the clients that I've worked with, you're not just preserving the muscle that you've got, you're actually noticing that you are getting better body recomposition, even in a calorie deficit, as long as you're doing this. So the main thing is, when you're slowing down the tempo to control the weight, you're going to recruit way more muscle fibers. And when you're making sure that even on a calorie deficit, you're trying to go for more repetitions, you know, each week, or trying to increase that weight by 1 or 2, maybe even up to 5 pounds, your body has no choice, as long as you're feeding it right, to put on more muscle and more strength. And that's the idea here, okay? Now, part 3 is where we actually start building muscle without gaining all the fat, okay? So in the past, I have done the dirty bulking thing. I've tried to do a conservative. I've done all these different ways, But if my emotions get the best of me, I end up gaining more body fat than I do muscle, and that sucks. So the myth here is that you need to eat a ton of food to gain muscle. It's not actually the reality. In reality, gaining muscle is really about consistent training in a small calorie surplus, not overeating. So what actually is effective is anywhere from 100 to 300 calories above your maintenance. Now you got to know your maintenance calories in order to know that, but this is where it's safe so that you're going to, as long as you're using progressive overload, you're going to be building on additional muscle and additional strength and size without gaining body fat. Is it slower than than doing the dirty bulk? Yeah, it's a little bit slower, but it's also going to look a lot better, and everything that you gain is going to be muscle. Whereas if you do it the fast way, where you're just the same way as trying to lose body fat, the fastest ways are usually going to be the fastest ways to reverse your progress. So I'm going to encourage you to go slower and to actually focus on doing 100 to 300 calories surplus above. Make sure your body handles it well. And as long as you're pushing that progressive overload in your workouts, getting enough protein, you are going to gain muscle. And it's not going to be in the form of getting a saggy chest and gaining a beer belly while you're building up. And that's what I've seen for years, is where guys are like, well, my arms are feeling thicker, which is great. They're filling out my shirts more, but I also feel like I've got man boobs going on and my belly's getting bigger. This sucks. What do I do? What you do is you go back and you get yourself a time machine and you stop yourself from overdoing those calories like that, but you make sure that you're pushing very, very hard in your workouts, and this is what's going to do it. So most guys hear bulk and think that it means eating everything in sight, but that approach often leads to gaining all this fat along with gaining some muscle. A lean bulking process like reverse dieting, which is what I do with my clients, it's going to allow you to gradually increase those calories to build muscle without packing on all the unnecessary fat that typically happens when people don't do a lean bulk, aka reverse diet. So how do we start this? Well, once you've leaned out, once we've gone through the process where you've gotten yourself, down to anywhere from 10 to about 15% body fat, and that's the first indicator. If you're above like 15, 16% body fat, you do not need to focus on putting on more muscle. It's just being frank with you. If you're below that, if you're between 10 to 15% and you're feeling small, definitely you're good to go ahead and start focusing on gaining muscle. But if you're carrying more body fat, like what I said, anything over 15%, I'm going to highly recommend, and again, I'm talking about the real 15%, not you guessing, because so many guys will be like, yeah, I think I'm like, 15, 16%. And when we check their body fat, they're closer to like 22. So know what your real body fat percentage is. I've got some calculators for that if you want to know what those are. But the point is that if you're doing it how everybody else does, where you're just like, well, I think I'm about this, so I'm just going to put on some size. You are going to put on some size, and it's going to be a bigger belt, a bigger shirt, bigger pants, and maybe a little bit more strength, okay? So it's just going to be better to, again, once you've leaned out, to slowly increase those calories by anywhere from 100 to 150 per day to start off, but we can basically get ourselves all the way up to around 300 calorie surplus as long as we do it more of that slow route. So if you're at your calories for cutting, we would just add 100. Make sure that you don't balloon up right away, add another 100 and then another 100. And we do this incrementally, gradually, so that you end up increasing your calories to get yourself to a surplus. But by that point, because your metabolism is going to adapt, it'll either down-regulate or up-regulate based on how you feed it. And if you're feeding it a surplus, but you're doing it slow, your metabolism, your body begins to actually burn more calories. It wastes more calories. So when we give it more of that surplus, now it's got the excess calories that it needs to actually put on that muscle, okay? So we want to also make sure that when you're doing your lean bulk, 80% of your foods are going to come from nutrient-dense foods. And we're going to maintain a balance of adequate protein, carbs, and fats, all right? So if you've been eating 2,000 calories to maintain the leaner physique, you want to bump to around 2,100 to 2,150 to start, and then track your progress, and then we'll adjust accordingly from there. Now, the other thing that you want to do is pair your calorie increases with adequate progressive overload, like I mentioned before, in your workouts, so that you're directing those extra calories towards building muscle instead of storing fat. But if we start increasing the calories and you're not really hitting it hard enough in the gym, whether home gym, hotel, or public gym, you are going to notice that you're going to get softer instead of building on the muscle that you want to. So the other thing is you want to track your weight, your measurements, and your body fat percentage regularly. I teach every 4 weeks for full measurements, every 1 to 2 weeks checking your weight and your waist to make sure that we're not going in the wrong direction. If you're gaining more than 1 to 2 pounds per month, now again, I'm not saying that you can't gain more than that, but if you are consistently doing that, you probably want to dial back your calories and increase your calorie increases so that you're going to be able to keep those gains more lean. Now again, I've seen some people gain as much as 3-4 pounds a month. Obviously, if you're going to be on some sort of performance enhancing stuff, you're going to gain more than that. But just to be blunt with you, I don't work with people that are not, if you're on TRT or HRT, whatever you want to call it, and it's from your doctor, I'll work with you. But if you're doing something that's shady, or if it's like, gray market, black market, if it's anything PED style that's not from a doctor, I will not work with you. It's too dangerous, and it just throws in too many variables, not to mention the psychological effects that go on from that. So that's kind of what we do, and it works really, really well. I've done this for a long time. So my question for you is, are you ready to finally go from Costanza, from Seinfeld, to Statham, from the Transporter and all of those, without PEDs, without bodybuilding diets, without the grueling 2-hour gym sessions? If so, here's what you do. Go ahead and drop me a comment or DM me on what you want to achieve and where you're stuck. That's the very first thing. I'm going to help you personally to map out the next steps to build out your Action-Hero Physique. So whether you're just getting started or you're stuck trying to figure out what's next, doesn't matter in the slightest. I'm going to help you to take the next step towards building that Action-Hero Physique that you've actually been dreaming of, okay? Now, the whole thing is that this takes time, but when you're doing it the right way, we can really do what I call time collapsing, which is where you're going to borrow my knowledge and my experience instead of you trying to figure out the long way like I had to do, where you become a personal trainer and you learn how to do the fat loss thing and how to put on some muscle, but still not like what you think, and you finally get nutrition certified and you learn a little bit more, and then finally you go through all these courses and programs and weekend seminars and week-long seminars and more courses and continue education. And then finally, over the course of time of studying all the metabolism, you figure out the mathematics. If you don't want to go through all of that stuff like I did, again, I started my personal training career in 2005. We're in 2025 right now. So what I'm saying is, if you don't want to go through all of the stuff that I went through to figure out how to do this so that you can get the Action-Hero Physique that you're wanting, go ahead and DM me. Let's talk just a little bit about what your goals are and how, if and how I can help you to get where you want to go. So remember though, you do not need the extremes to build an incredible physique. I promise you that. And I'm not saying that I've got the most amazing physique in the world whatsoever, but I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I like how I look now, despite being smaller than what I used to. I feel better. I'm healthier. I'm on lower testosterone than I've been in, 8 years, and I feel better. I'm becoming more functional as the years go by, and I'm approaching 40. And so for me, to be approaching 40 and to be in better shape than when I was in my 20s, that feels great. So if that's you and you would like to feel better in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s than what you did in your 20s, go ahead and send me a DM. Let's talk about this. It really is about working smarter, very, very meticulously, not harder, and creating a plan that fits your life. Because the thing is, I love food. I don't avoid food. We're going to have pizza here in a little bit. I still have the occasional beer. I have a glass of wine. I have chocolate. I have things that I enjoy. And yet, when I'm in my cutting phase or even in my reverse dieting phase where I'm putting on muscle, I still have my abs visible all year round. Now, I'm not telling you that that's required, but what I'm saying is I've got it so dialed in that I'm able to see my abs all year round, regardless of which phase I'm in. And that's a really great thing to be in. So, what is holding you back? Let me know in the comments basically whether it's you feel like you're struggling to put on muscle, you're struggling to lose body fat without feeling like you're wasting your muscle, or maybe you're struggling to put on muscle without feeling like you just gain a ton of fat. Let me know in the comments or in the DMs, what is it that you're struggling with? What can I help you to reach? But let me just tell you something. If you feel even remotely close to looking or feeling like the George Costanza, whether you're bald, whether you're short, doesn't matter. If you're feeling like you're stocky or flabby or fluffy, as I used to call it, instead of feeling like you've got the hard to find muscles that make you feel like if you had your shirt off, you'd feel just as confident as wearing a suit, this is where I want to help you. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that this makes sense. I hope that you'll see the value in this, and the fact is you don't have to gain all the body fat to put on muscle, but you also don't have to lose your muscle just to get in shape. And more than anything, you don't have to go through a weight loss program where you don't have any muscle just to get lean enough so that you can put on muscle, okay? So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys on